Hey everybody, welcome to episode 16 of You Cannot Rewatch, the Evangelion Rewatch podcast. I'm David.
And I am Dylan.
And this is our second time trying this.
Yep.
So make sure you've rewatched or have refreshed your knowledge on episode 16 before you listen to this. But just in case you haven't and you're not sure about the episode, this is the one where they fight an angel that is a black sphere, shadow field. That one. You probably know what I'm talking about. Have you seen the show? It's the only one that's like that. Although, hang on. First order of business. Did you see that they have... I don't know if I would use the word announced, but there is a listing on a couple websites. I'll post the links in the YouTube description for anyone listening. If you haven't seen it, you've probably seen it if you're a hardcore Eva fan by the time you listen to this. They have said that they're doing a Blu-ray set of the show.
No way.
As well as re-releasing End of Evangelion and Death and Rebirth, although I don't really care about Death and Rebirth. But, however, they didn't say this for American release. This was on a Japanese site. So people are really excited about it, and I want to be really excited about it. I think it's cool that we've got that announcement instead of rather, not knowing at all.
Right.
But the thing I think people want to keep in mind is, now, if you're planning on importing it from Japan, then go ahead and get excited as you want. But for most of us here in the United States, we're probably not planning on doing that. We're probably just hoping that there will soon be a release here because there's going to be one in Japan. But I just want to remind everybody about Evangelion 3.0 on Blu-ray.
Yep, I was just about to say, I'm hopeful that Funimation would pick it up, but seeing it has great of a job they've done with 3.0.
Yeah, and now some people might say, well, even if Funimation picks it up, it's not like they'll run into the same problems, because supposedly the problems with 3.0 are they needed to re-record and fix some of the dialogue.
Right.
And people, maybe you would think, well, they won't need to do that with the show. I don't know. A lot of times with older stuff like that, licensing doesn't hold up. They may not have the ability to use those original vocal tracks.
Right.
They might. I don't know. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying I don't know. If they do, that's great. They could probably get it out pretty quick. And people, obviously they could just release it just the sub version, which is fine with me, but I don't think they would do that if they're going to do an official release here. They'll probably release the dub on Blu-ray. Of course, you'll still have the option for the sub. But, so I don't know. I mean, if they have to re-record any dialogue, that could take a really long time, and I could see them having to re-record dialogue. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. So, I don't know.
Did it give a pricing or anything?
No, it didn't.
Dang.
No idea how much it'll be. Because, yeah, that's a concern, too. Usually, when they're released, the Ava stuff hasn't been bad at all on prices. But there are certain anime that are insanely expensive when they're released as a set.
The exact reason why I still don't have Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, the Gurren Lagann thing is nuts.
It's expensive.
Yeah. So I don't think they would do that with Ava. Because usually, like, the Blu-rays that get released, even just the movies, are, normal Blu-ray price.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, the thing that sucks about it happening to Ava is I'm going to want to buy it, but if it's $500 or something, and you might be listening and going, that's ridiculous, why would it be that much? Isn't that like what the Gurren Lagann one is?
Yeah, the Gurren Lagann's like $500.
Yeah, so it may be ridiculous, but it's happened. And obviously that's, not same studio, not same developers at all. So I'm not saying it's going to happen to Ava, but it has happened with other shows.
Actually, I think Gurren Lagann is one of the studios is the same as Ava.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Oh, well, then we're really fucked. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying don't get excited, but I'm saying take it with a grain of salt. I really want to be, like, stoked for it, but I still, even best case scenario, we're not getting it next year like Japan is. Yeah. Best case scenario, we get it kind of early, mid-2016, which is still a really long time away. But yeah, I hope that works out well. I'd love to see the show remastered.
Me too. That'd be great.
Yep, and I've never really seen special features. I don't know if the original DVD releases had much of that or not. I really don't know, but I'd love to see, like, behind the scenes if there are in the show.
Really cool.
I've tried to look for stuff on YouTube, and I've seen a few things, but nothing that really captured my interest that much. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing like that exists. Yeah. But if there is, I love behind the scenes stuff, especially
that'd be great to see.
Projects I'm interested in.
Not to get, like, too far off on the tangent, but I did see a photo of a VHS of Ava today. That was pretty cool. I didn't realize that they number them, though, 0, episode number. I thought that was really interesting why he did that.
Oh, yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, I don't know why he chose to do that. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on into the episode
Yep,
now, since
right into it.
that's the point of this podcast. So I just want to go ahead and say I've said this I think on the last couple podcasts, but this is the episode where that made me love Evangelion.
Um, this episode means so much more to me now after watching everything than
Yeah.
it did the first time I saw it.
Absolutely. But even the first time watching it, I said last week, I love a show to just get fucking weird and crazy and not make sense for a little bit. As long as we come back around and I can fill it in later, I'm fine with let's get to some fucking weird places.
Yeah.
And really, for the most part, aside from the fact that we built big robots and we're fighting aliens, the show hasn't really been that weird. For an anime, it's been pretty typical so far. It's better than most shows I think that are of a similar genre, but it hasn't really gotten weird. And then I remember for the first time, I was watching it, I was like, I don't know, I guess these angel fights are kind of cool. And then you see this one, and it's just like so different and unique, and just fucking like crazy. And I really like that. I think this is a kind of overlooked episode. I really feel like probably because the next few episodes, shit really hits the fan, not just with the crazy plot, but with a lot of the other characters as well. But I really feel like this is a really great episode. This is one of my favorites.
There's so much to talk about in this episode too.
Yeah,
and I really feel like this is one of those episodes that you sometimes hear people say they don't like Evangelion.
Yeah,
I feel like this is one of those episodes that separates those people, whether you're gonna like it or not.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people that say that never made it this far, and if they did, they just weren't down for it. I can understand. Maybe you even liked how the show was going, and then you get to this point, and it's just like shit just gets too weird. I can understand that. I love that.
Me too.
Get even weirder, which I guess we're going to. So that I wasn't disappointed in that respect. Back at the top of the episode, we start out with a very lighthearted opening. Last week's episode wasn't. I don't know if I'd call it lighthearted, but it was pretty easygoing. It was mostly just kind of cutting deep into the characters, and there was some pretty real drama between some people, but a lot of it was kind of played for comedy, and it was, pretty lighthearted. So the first scene of this episode starts out the same way, which, I love stuff that starts out kind of happy and then just sends you down a fucking, train wreck.
Yeah.
I think that's great from a writing standpoint.
And they kind of continued to do that at least one more episode I know for sure that they do that with. Kind of misdirect you on that.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Me too.
But yeah, we start out with the opening, and it's Asuka and Shinji and Misato kind of arguing about Shinji's characteristics, which doesn't really seem important. It seems like a goofy conversation, but we see a little bit of that, kind of what Asuka's saying, kind of come back later. And even though she's just kind of being, I would say bitchy in that moment, we see that what she's saying there, how that kind of affects her character later in the episode about how she feels about Shinji.
Yeah.
And we also see, I think, a lot of what she's saying is a front. She's, trying to purposefully badger Shinji so that she doesn't reveal, her true feelings. And I think we see that later in the episode, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but, when she says, well, he was just stupid and he got himself caught, or aren't you going to punish him now, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's Asuka not wanting anyone to know that she actually is really sad that Shinji might be dead and her.
Yeah, she was legitimately concerned, but she doesn't want people to know that.
Yeah, even when somebody, even in complete dire straits like this, she's still not going to let down that front of
right.
I am a hard person, and I'm she doesn't want people to think of her as soft.
Exactly.
But I just think that's interesting because I think a lot of people might walk away from this episode thinking that it was really just a Shinji episode, but I actually think we got a lot of some of the other characters.
Yeah, this episode is packed with a lot of emotion.
It's packed with a lot of shit. This is the first time I've ever had notes that went past just one page.
Same here.
We've been talking about how excited we were to get to these episodes, and now that we're here, it's oh shit, now there's too much to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
So these might start running a little longer. We've kind of said that before, some of the older episodes were going to be a little shorter. We don't want to run these too long, but just, that's what you're here for, so. So we see Shinji has a test score that is higher than any pilot now. He is the best around. And, he's very happy about it, which before he said he didn't really like praise. There was even an episode where they were going to give him praise about something with the Eva piloting or his test scores or something, and he wasn't about it. But he's obviously kind of changed on that. Soon after that, we get one of my favorite scenes just purely for what the fuck is this stupid scene? This is a great episode, but there's a scene of Shinji riding on a bus, like doing the the symbolic opening and closing of his hand, but then you just see some kids like laughing at how fucking dumb he looks. I think that seems really funny just because it's like randomly thrown in here, and it's just like a quick glimpse of like Shinji looks all like serious and like we were like, oh yeah, he's doing the hand thing, and then you see it from another person's perspective and it just looks stupid.
Yeah.
So then the angel appears. It is we don't know it's an angel at first. They say it's pattern orange. Maybe it's a new type of angel. They can't identify it officially as an angel at that point. So they launch the Evas into action, and Asuka kind of challenges Shinji to run on ahead, even though that's against their orders. And Shinji, in a very rare show of confidence, agrees to do that.
Really cocky.
Shinji gets real cocky in this episode.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out for him. But it's interesting because I kind of forgot how cocky he got in this episode, because watching the rebuilds in 2.0, he gets a bit like that. And I remember always thinking, like, oh, it's cool to see him cocky because we never saw that in the show. And we actually do in this episode, and it kind of is a similar situation. Like, in 2.0, he has that moment. Sorry if you haven't seen 2.0, but, rebuild spoiler. He has the moment where he decides to go after Rey, and he's like, really, like, I'm going to fucking do it. And it's the first time we see Shinji, at least in the rebuilds. I guess apparently we see it now in the show here too. We see Shinji like really grab hold of his destiny and his actions and be like, I'm going to make a change. And we see it become a fucking train wreck for him. It doesn't work out. But we actually get a little glimpse of that here in this episode. So I just thought that was a cool parallel.
Which, I mean, again, also doesn't work out for him, really.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we get that cool parallel of like, that happens in both these situations. And I didn't really realize that it was a similar scenario. It's not exactly the same, obviously, but it's that same kind of thing of like Shinji thinking that he can be better than he is, and it doesn't work out very well. So then after Shinji has been absorbed into the angel, we see a scene of Asuka and Rey, and like I mentioned this earlier, but Asuka, is kind of saying like, well, he deserves that, he shouldn't have disobeyed orders. But what's interesting about this scene is Rey's reaction, because Rey, earlier in the show would have just stood there silently, but she actually challenges and confronts Asuka. And instead of saying anything to defend Shinji, she just says, I should have wrote down the exact line, but it's something about, is the only reason you pilot Ava for the praise of others. Praise of others.
Yeah, that's pretty much, that's what I wrote down.
That's great, because what's so great about that line from Rey is Rey easily could have been like, hey, you're a fucking bitch, or like, hey, don't you even care about Shinji? But she said something that really cut deep to Asuka. Like, anything else would have been Asuka would have bounced off of, but that was like, Rey knew very specifically what to say to Asuka to really get her fucking deep.
Yeah.
And I think, this is, we're seeing a big change in Rey at this point.
We're seeing a big change, I feel like, in all the characters. This episode really shows a lot of difference of all the characters and where they've really started to come from now.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I just think it's more surprising from Rey, because I think a lot of people didn't really expect to see that from her, because she seems like such a static character.
Exactly.
So then we find out a little bit more about the angel. We see that, first of all, even though it's a black shadow, inside what Shinji sees is just pure white. Which is interesting. Then they say it's an inverted AT field, like the angel, the sphere that appears above the ground is merely a shadow, and the actual angel is a inverted AT field. They call it the Sea of Dirac, which is a term invented just for the show, I believe. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find anything. Essentially it's a black hole. It's another dimension, or another place in space-time that it absorbs you into, and there's no getting back from. At least, obviously Shinji does, but there's no reasonable way to get back from it.
Right.
This is a really interesting angel. We haven't seen an angel in 3 episodes, and the last one we saw was a computer virus. So we haven't seen a real angel in 4 episodes, the one that fell, that was trying to be a bomb and was falling onto Earth. This angel, I just really like this angel because to me, I feel like it's what 13 tried to do with hey, this angel's not typical, you can't fight it the normal ways, but they just made that episode about hacking.
Yeah.
This episode's great because it gives you that feeling of what do you fucking do with something like this? Mm-hmm. And that's just a cool curveball for the show, because aside from the computer virus one, all the angels were. It was pretty obvious how they were going to beat him. They were going to fucking fight him with guns and knives, and then they were going to win. But this is the first episode where all of a sudden it's like everything you know has changed and no longer applies.
Yeah, and it even like questions the pilots in other way. I mean, like the pilots have to like directly, well, just Shinji, I guess, has to deal with it directly by like it's really making it's like both psychological and destructive physically at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like it's the show always does a pretty good job of matching up whatever's happening in the action with actually what's going on deep inside the characters.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is an episode where that really shines.
Yeah.
It's always a little more subtle in some of the other episodes, but in this episode, it's like, hey, this is fucking, we're tying it all together now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, man, there's a lot to talk about this episode. First of all, outside of the black space, whatever, they say that the priority is to salvage Unit 1, even if it's damaged, even if Shinji dies. Unit 1 is the priority. So even though Shinji is important, or is, would be beneficial to Gendo's plan, it's not necessary. It's not, it doesn't have to, he doesn't have to be there. Like, they could use a Ray or the dummy plug, maybe.
Exactly, yeah.
Which...
He's not a number one priority in anything.
Yeah, like, it's definitely going to be best done through Shinji, but it's clearly not the only way to do it. But Unit 1 obviously does have to have Unit 1. Like, if Unit 1 is destroyed, Gendo's plan is fucked. So let's dive into what happens inside, I guess. So we see what becomes a famous kind of train sequence of Shinji riding the train. Of course, we've seen him do this before in real life, but now we're seeing it kind of as a symbolic, metaphorical place. And it's got a very distorted reality look to it. It's got this, like, crazy fisheye, at least when it's on Shinji. When it's actually on the train car, it's kind of a normal, lens choice. But when it's on Shinji, it's very distorted. I guess kind of showing, like, the way he looks at himself is very different from how he looks to others. But this is there's a lot of kind of heavy shit, not just within Evangelion, but just about life at this point and about people and human nature. Although real quick, I just want to say another really cool artistic choice. I've always really been a big fan of the, like, when there is a, like, bodiless figure speaking, it's just like a black screen with, like, white lines. And because, like, the other thing that's talking to Shinji is, like, inside of his own head. It's obviously we do see, like, a kid that kind of is represented as maybe talking to him, a younger version of him. But, like, when it's just, like, lines of dialogue being spoken, it's just the white line trailing across the screen. I've just always thought that was a cool artistic choice.
I like that too. That's really cool.
It's just unusual. It's something you wouldn't expect to see in a show. But anyway, so the line starts talking to him, and it says that it is another self within the original self. This is a point where we might be getting to some problems as far as translation goes, because, again, for the millionth time, we don't know if our translations are totally accurate.
Right.
So, hopefully they are, but some of these quotes might be a little off from what you guys know them as, so just, bear with us if they do seem a little strange. But yeah, the actual line I had was this self incorporates another self. There's a self which is observed, and there is a self which observes itself. So basically saying, like, the way us humans look at things is, like, there's the way we view ourselves, and there's the way others view us, and those aren't the same thing.
Right.
Don't get those twisted. And that's something I remember. I watched this show when I was still in high school, and that, like, blew my mind legitimately. Like, I hadn't really thought about things that way. Like, looking at it, like, because, I think people are a lot harder on themselves when they look at themselves, and they're, very critical and very observant over certain things that other people don't even notice. And just the idea that, like, people have a completely different person in your mind. And it made me think about, like, everybody, if you meet somebody, like, randomly, like, at a party or at McDonald's or whatever, and they just see you, like, say, like, some joke or some stupid thing, that's their existence of you now. Like, they have that version of you in their head, and if they talk to you again later, like, even if you, like, turn out to be different, they're going to imagine you the way they already knew you. And that's not how you are, but it's also, in a way, it is how you are.
It's how you are, yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking, that blew my mind when I was in high school.
Yeah, it's like these, it's like both versions are truths, but, they're still different.
Yeah, it's just super psychological and kind of philosophical. It's really interesting. But then we see, we see Shinji kind of replaying moments from his life, and I'll be honest, I don't know if a lot of other people do this. I do that all the time. Like, constantly in my head, I will replay moments from my life.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, just go over them over and over. And I do the thing, like Shinji will sometimes like replay a moment and like play it a little bit differently, even though it's not the accurate way it happened. It's more the way he imagined it happening. I definitely do that too. Like good and bad memories. Like maybe like with Shinji, like if there's a memory where somebody was kind of like nice to him, he might remember it and look at it as like they were kind of being mean to me. And I think people absolutely do that. That's that's another reason I really like the show is it's not just a show about a plot and action. It really makes you kind of connect to some of the things going through the character's head and like make you realize like, oh shit, I've done that. Like other people do that, and like what does that mean? And I don't know, but I just think that stuff's really cool.
No, it's really interesting because it does. When a show can like make you not only question what's going on in the show, but like think about yourself in the same way. I mean, that's just awesome writing.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
like
really
that's what I love anything that when the credits roll, I'm still left thinking about everything that happened.
Yeah.
And Evangelion does that in two major ways. And one, in like what the fuck happened to the story, but it really makes you think about kind of like everything else in your life. Like I found so many moments where like something will happen and like I'll connect it with like some psychological thing from the show, or like I'll learn something from the show that like I'll meet somebody else and I'll be like, oh shit, that kind of applies to this person. And for a show that's about robots fighting aliens, that's pretty fucking impressive.
No, yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's a lot of the charm of Evangelion is it's really not what you see on the surface. It's so much more complex and deep below it.
Well, I think it's why you can really come through and see that Ano really is writing how he's feeling at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's obvious in a lot of writers' styles when you read stuff and watch movies and stuff, but it's very obvious here. Ano is using Evangelion as a like projection of himself. Like it's a sounding board for all of the ideas going through his head.
It's like an animated journal he's basically writing.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, he's just using the characters' voices to speak for himself, and not just Shinji, but really all of the characters, for the different aspects of him.
Like Ritsuko is like his bitchy side.
Yeah. So yeah, but they say, will you spend your life regurgitating and redigesting these few pleasant memories? Like, are you not gonna like try to make your life better? Are you just gonna like accept it and like play your greatest hits on a repeat? Yeah, and there are people that fucking do that. Like they don't strive for anything else. They just like kind of get stuck in this like mindset of like kind of like what Shinji would be like if their third impact didn't happen. Like just this is a very different example than what happens on the show, obviously. But like let's say somebody like goes and gets like a part-time job and like they don't strive for anything else in their life, and like which is okay. But like some of those people will just like justify that as like by like replaying the few like happy moments and like ignoring all the bullshit. Like maybe their job fucking sucks and is miserable and they hate it and they barely make any money, but instead of striving for better, they'll just replay like the one moment where their boss said something good about them, or where somebody said, hey, I'm glad you do that job, and despite all of the bullshit and reasons that they should go do something else, they will play like those two tiny happy memories and like continue to do it.
Or even like the people like in high school, they were like the most popular people in high school. And then once they get out, they don't do anything. They stick around that town and just try and constantly relive those glory days of being that person.
Yeah, hey, I might offend somebody watching, but anybody out there that says your best days were in high school, you're just doing your life wrong. You really are. It's okay to look back on high school. I look back on high school and I think it was a lot of fun. I liked high school, but I don't ever look back on it and think those were my best days behind me. I don't ever look back at it and think, man, I just want to go back there and live those days again. No, I fucking don't.
I look back at high school and I'm glad I'm out of it, and those are the worst days of my life, and I'm happy about.
Oh, really? I actually had a lot of fun in high school. I wouldn't say they're the worst days of my life.
I had fun too, but compared to like now.
It's just it's not the same. Yeah, if that offends you, then maybe you need to reevaluate your life choices a little bit, because I think that right now should be the best moments in your life.
Exactly.
When you're 80, you can look back on your life and think your best moments are behind you. But if you're still young, you should be living your best moments now. And if you're not, you're an adult, so start doing it, because that's up to you. Man, we're getting off Evangelion and on life advice.
So dangerous. Moving on.
Anyway, so but then I mean, going kind of what we were just talking about, like Shinji says, like everybody deceives himself. Everybody does that in their own way, and I think that's true. Like to an extent, there are people that do it on a much deeper level, like we were mentioning. But everybody kind of deceives themselves a little bit about kind of how situations go down and how life works, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He also says an extremely nihilistic comment of the world is filled with too much hate to go on. Which is kind of setting up a lot of this is really, we've always got the impression that Shinji's kind of depressed and disconnected from things, but I think this is the first episode where we see it like hitting full front. Like Shinji legitimately says the world is filled with too much hate to go on. I remember after the first time I watched Evangelion, reading some stuff about it, and it's been so. I mean, I read this in high school, so I might be remembering it slightly wrong. I want to say this was an Ano quote, but maybe it was just somebody talking about the show. But I remember reading the line that somebody said, Shinji is the kind of person that like is so depressed about the way things are that would kill himself, but he's even too pathetic to like get the energy to do that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
And that always struck me as really interesting. Just the idea that like somebody is so down on life that they would kill themselves, but they're even too uninterested in doing that.
Yeah.
That's like a fucking dark place, man.
Yeah, they're just so pathetic in every aspect that like they can't even bring themselves to kill themselves, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and that I think that fits Shinji pretty well. That seems like.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody that listens to our podcast feels like that. Hey, if you feel like that, don't feel like you got to just, keep going through. Like, go talk to somebody about that, because that's not good.
More life advice from the wet rats.
But then, he says, or not Shinji, but Shinji's other self, is self inside himself or whatever, says, no one can justify their life by linking happy moments into a rosary, which is the way it's translated, the way I read it. So hopefully that's how it is too. So, kind of what we said, like, you can't just keep going through your life only replaying the happy moments. Like, you need to. And that doesn't just mean, I think that means more than just, like, make happy memories in the future. I think that also means, like, you have to accept all aspects of life. You can't just try to look at the happy ones. Like, that's part of Shinji's problem, is he runs away from all the things he doesn't like and regurgitates the few things he does. And that's not a healthy way to go through life for a lot of reasons. But to really, like, be successful or, like, happy, I think, in life, you can't just look at the things you like and ignore the things you don't. To an extent, that's a little okay. But, like, you have to accept all the, like, bullshit and bad things, too, and accept that that's just an aspect of living. I think to really, like, kind of let go of that stuff. More life advice. I mean, I don't know what else to talk about. I mean, that's what the show's about at this point, really.
Yeah.
We're getting deep into that human side
like,
of things. So,
like they kind of said earlier too, it's like Shinji's afraid to accept what other people might think of him, or in other ways too, because he's afraid of getting hurt, or he wants people not to hate him. He's just so concerned about people not hating him and not getting himself hurt that he just doesn't move forward. He's kind of stays there.
Yeah, definitely. Because he's really concerned about that version of him that exists in everyone else's mind.
Yeah, that's like his main priority.
Yeah, which I'm sure a lot of people identify with that.
Yeah, definitely.
On a non-psychological note, one really interesting little thing slipped into this episode is Shinji, as he's dying, he's literally dying, starts to he plays back a couple like kind of memories. I assume they're real from when he was a kid, and he sees all these people. I assume maybe like reporters or people like accusing Gendo of killing his wife.
Yeah,
and that's interesting because we haven't ever found out what happened to Shinji's mom at this point in the show. Obviously, this is a rewatch, so but it's just cool the first time because this episode is so cram filled with other shit. That's something that I think people might miss. But like, not just do we learn his wife was killed, but we learned Gendo was actually accused by, it seems, a number of people of actually being the killer, which is something we never really touch on later. We obviously find out what happens to Yui, but we never really see the side where like people were after Gendo for that. But then Shinji says the line that couldn't be right because his mom was smiling.
Yeah.
Which is a fucking weird line at the time. Obviously, we learn later that Shinji was actually there when the experiment failed, and he was actually watching as his mom went into the Evangelion. Which we kind of see what that process would look like in 3.0. If hopefully you've seen 3.0. Sorry for that spoiler. But that's interesting because Shinji doesn't ever seem to remember that again. The rest of the show. I think at some point somebody even tells him like, "You were there" or something. Or no, that's in 3.0. I think that Fuyutsuki tells him that.
Yeah, I think Fuyutsuki tells him in 3.
But I mean, Shinji straight up saw what happened to his mom. But he obviously has a trigger memory of it here, but then it doesn't ever come back. Like after this point, it doesn't seem like he remembers it. Or I guess maybe he does, and he just never acknowledges it. I don't know. But then we see some kind of like distorted memory of him bringing her something. And she looks like fucking weird, like really distorted. She almost looks like I think maybe this is just me. Maybe no one else got this. I almost feel like she looks like the third angel, the first one we see in the show, Sachiel, when she's kind of like it's like her dark silhouette. I always thought that like she looked like that angel in that scene.
I never thought about that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that's intentional or if like I just completely picked that up myself. But I remember like the first time I even saw that scene, or even like in this episode, I remember thinking like, why is the third angel talking to Shinji? So yeah, we have that memory, and she says the line. Shit, I didn't write it down. That's good for you. Is that the line?
I didn't write it down either. I think so. No, it's
what?
That might be it. I saw a quote on the synopsis of it, but I think it has the Japanese and not the actual English version of it. So I don't know what it means.
Yeah, it's something like that's good for you. It's something like that.
Yeah, because all I have is so Yakata main. I don't know what that means, but that's what I have.
Yeah,
that's what it has
I
written
don't know.
Here.
So then after that kind of plays out, we see the angel like break apart. The ground literally like cracks and like boils, and then the sphere, which was just a shadow, materializes into its own physical thing. It's no longer got the lines on it. Yeah. It's just a solid black sphere now. I've always thought, just like from a pure visual standpoint, this scene fucking rules. Yes. The image of him like bursting out of that and like tearing through it and the blood just fucking raining down everywhere, fucking crazy. Again, like I love that kind of shit in a show, and it's just visually it's so striking and bizarre to see, because you know we've seen angels die before, and we've even seen some of them be a little kind of bloody, but like just seeing this thing fucking explode with blood is crazy.
It's pretty cool, and this is like a good scene for like to kind of give you like as you hit through this whole entire episode. There's like more to the Evas than the people realize. Because even Asuka, you just hear Asuka be like, "Is that what I'm piloting?" Like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say next. Like, while this is happening, Asuka says the line, "Am I piloting a thing like that?" Yeah. And then even Ritsuko is like surprised and almost kind of scared and shocked by it. It says, "What kind of monster?" The line I have in my translation is, "What kind of monster have we copied from?" So I guess her line isn't even necessarily the angel's fucking crazy. It's more like, "What the fuck did we copy the Eva from?"
The dub one is, "What have we created?" or like, "What have we made?"
That's what I thought.
It's like similar, I guess.
Yeah, but just the idea that like at least in the translation I have, which might be wrong, but it sounds like she's not even terrified of the Eva. It's more like terrified of the thing that they're housing that they made the Eva from.
Well, I think Masato's what it says. It's kind of like a point she made. Is like, all right, so we made these things to kill the angel, but what's going to stop us from these things when we kill the angels?
Yeah, what will we do with these? What is Nerv's plan once the angels are all dead?
Yeah, like what's going to stop these things from?
Yeah, which is cool because, for one thing, I always wonder a little bit why these characters have never thought about that before.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's a line for the audience. I think a lot of people watching the show weren't really thinking that far ahead in a show like this. They weren't necessarily thinking, like, what's the end game? They probably figured, the Evas will win and they'll save the day and it'll be great because they'll save the world. And I think this is the part where they're really trying to put doubt in the viewer's mind of, like, hey, maybe they're not just going to save the day and party. Maybe there's something fucking bad gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's really cool because I think definitely the impression would be it was just gonna have a normal traditional happy ending, and I love those little seeds of doubt they start sowing in.
Yeah, me too. It's really good. I don't know, it's pretty awesome because then it just really makes you wonder. It's like, crap, here we thought the angels were the biggest threat the whole entire time, but maybe they're not.
Yeah, maybe it almost reminds me. This might be a really stupid comparison. Maybe nobody will get this if you watch this. I don't know. If you ever played Shadow of the Colossus, the whole game you're killing these giant monsters and you're like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna save the world, and then like at the end you find out like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to that. Actually, that game might be kind of inspired by this. I wonder because there's 16 Colossus and there's 17 angels in the original show, and Karu's the last one, so there's actually only 16 they kill like as officially as angels. But it reminds me of that same thing of like just going through and like thinking that you've been defeating these things in a good way, and then realizing like. And even slowly throughout that game, you start to realize, like, when these things die, it's actually kind of like sad and like,
no, it really
it doesn't seem like happy. And like, yeah, it's definitely similar. Bet nobody expected to talk about Shadow of the Colossus on an Evangelion podcast. But anyways, so when Shinji has now, first of all, I also want to say, small side note, but still about Evangelion. I don't think this has ever been made. I've always thought a figure of Unit 1, like, drenched in blood in, like, the Berserk mode after it burst out of this would be so fucking cool.
That'd be really, really cool.
Oh, also, I guess we should mention, is the him bursting out of the... I don't know what to describe it other than just a ball, the sphere, I guess. That's meant to be, like, kind of symbolic of, like, a womb, right? Because he saw his mom and, like, now he's, like, being reborn and, like, bursting out of it.
The analyst I heard is reborn's definitely it, but it's meant to be almost like a baptism type thing.
Oh,
like
really?
Being baptized by blood. I'm assuming baptized by blood is what they're meaning by that. Kind of
Yeah.
like he's being washed of all of his sins kind of thing. Like he's got through everything, washed through everything out, and now it's kind of like like you said, it's instead of being born, like a rebirth. Almost,
right.
Though.
Yeah. I just kind of got the womb thing, too, just because, like, it just seems like it's a violent way to tear from a womb. But you know, like, the mother's involved, and, like, he just saw his mom, and now the Unit 1, which appears to kind of have been, like, truly awakened, is now kind of bursting free. Not just of the angel, but kind of the rules and the things that have, like, kept it in check. But yeah, so once Misato kind of opens the eject pod, Shinji's first line is, "I just wanted to see them again." Was that the same for you?
Yes. Yep. He says that. I just want to see them again. Yep.
Okay. Who do you think he means? Because I was really wondering that.
That's a good question. Well, before his mom, you see Gendo and Masato. He sees a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, he also plays a couple memories of Rei and Asuka.
Maybe it just means all of them.
Maybe I mean, presumably that's who he means. I don't think he's got, like, you know, his buddy, like, Randolph back in, you know, another part of Tokyo 3. But, like, presumably it's these main characters. But that's just interesting because, I mean, obviously he does like Asuka, and, you know, he's interested in Rei, but, like, he just doesn't seem that connected to the characters. But obviously he is, because, I mean, that's kind of what he says drove him to, like, push forward to come back, because he just wanted to see everybody again. And I think this is a little bit of a preview of what happens in the end of Evangelion, because in end of Eva, obviously he says, like, hey, fuck everybody, but then ultimately he's like, you know what, no, we all deserve to kind of live and, like, be together. And, you know, we see a little bit of that here, because I think probably before he went into the angel, he was probably feeling like fuck everybody, but ultimately when push comes to shove, he decides, like, you know, I do want to see those people again.
Yeah, exactly.
What else? They say, are the Avas on our side? They may hate us. Ritsuko says that. And then she says, and I really wanted to see if this was the same, if my translation was correct. But the line she says in mine was, if they find out, Rei or Shinji won't forgive us.
That was going to bring up a point to it. That's exactly what they say in there, which is super fucking interesting.
Yeah. I obviously, I think it's obvious why Shinji wouldn't. Yeah. But just the fact that Rei is thrown in there is kind of bizarre and crazy.
The fact that Rei's thrown in there and not
Asuka. Or Misato or anybody else, you know, because there's probably a lot of nerve staff that aren't aware. But yeah, it's specifically Rei, who it seems kind of just knows everything. Like, it seems like Gendo probably doesn't hold meetings and, like, say, like, oh, Rei, you gotta leave the room because we can't talk about this in front of you. Like, it seems like, you know, she's probably just around and hears a lot of this. She obviously knows about Lilith. I don't know if she thinks it's Adam, but she knows about Lilith because she took the lance and, you know, fucking stuck it in that.
Exactly.
I think she's aware of the fact that she's a clone. She fucking spends her Saturday nights in a fucking fish tank under Gendo's laboratory.
That's the only thing I can think of is, like, her losing it because she's worried. Well, maybe Ritsuko doesn't know that Rei knows she's a clone too, I guess.
But Ritsuko, I think, definitely knows, because Ritsuko's the one in a few episodes that goes and destroys all the Rei clones. Like, she's in charge of that shit.
Yeah.
I think she's the one who actually
can't possibly think of,
that.
like, what would upset Rei about this, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Maybe Rei doesn't know that she's, you know, built from Yui.
Yui? Maybe so.
Which I don't know. I think that's an interesting line. If anybody has any, like, good theories about why they would be worried about Rei, I'd love to hear them.
And I'm also curious too. It's like, why specifically, like, why not Oscar? Like, any of those other people, like,
yeah,
because, like, Oscar's also a pilot, so it's like, if she knows what she's piloting, like, because I saw it as, like, if they find out what they're piloting, like, kind of thing, they'll be upset. It's like, well, why wouldn't Asuka, like, be a fit?
Yeah, it seems like it would really upset Asuka way more than Rei, because Asuka bases her existence around piloting it, and she views it as a toy. If she were to know that it's not a toy and it's a fucking living thing, and it also has her mom inside of it,
yeah.
I think that she'd be a little more upset than Rei. But the idea that they prioritize Rey in that conversation is bizarre.
Yeah,
And maybe it's
really
just like a fuck up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's really not many fuck ups in Evangelion. I think there's a good reason for it. But speaking of the Rey and Yui thing, we have another situation of when Rey is visiting Shinji in the hospital. She says the same line to him.
Well, that's good for you.
Yeah, well, that's good for you.
The website I have has it in another way. I even tried translating what they have on that website, and nothing came up. So I don't know why they have it. I don't know why they did just say, "Well, that's good for you."
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
But and Shinji obviously kind of notices like, oh shit, what the fuck does that mean? Smaller thing, but then we see Asuka outside the door, proving that despite all of her mean comments, she's still very curious and worried about if Shinji's going to be all right. And that's the episode.
Yeah.
I think we covered it all pretty well. Hopefully we didn't miss anything. There's a lot in that episode, so I tried to write everything down. I had to fucking pause it. It was not the most fun to watch the episode because I had to fucking pause every 2 seconds to jot down a line.
I went back and rewatched a lot of scenes too.
Oh yeah, I probably should have done that. But so we don't really have anything else to talk about other than that, I guess. But if anybody has any discussion about the things we talked about or the ideas we had about it, send us some comments or emails or whatever you want to do. All that information, as always, is in the YouTube description. Next week we're going to be watching episode 17, of course, which is the first of a two-parter. So we'll see how interesting talking about next week is. Episode 18 is fucking crazy because it's all the finale of that two-parter. But 17, I don't remember. It might be a little less. We'll see. But after how long this one is, I think that's okay. I would maybe say we could combine them, but I think that would be too long.
Too long.
Especially because this one's going to run long. And hey, I'm going to say straight up, episode 19 is going to be probably pretty fucking long. And so will 20 and 21 and all the rest of the show at this point. So we'll enjoy one more short episode next week. Rewatch that, refresh your knowledge on that, whatever you need to do. And we'll see you then.
Yep. See you later, guys.